So I just got off the phone with some friends of ours, real estate agents in Atlanta. Kim Tordick, Greg Tordick, Team Tordick, and we were talking about real estate, obviously. Mm-hmm. But we got onto the topic, the conversation, discussion of nobody can buy a house. Nobody. And this is somewhat fueled by some of the recent videos and titles and thumbnails and headlines that have been circulating here recently. And then we really kind of drilled down on it from the perspective of, well, why can nobody buy a house today? When in fact we know people are buying houses because we see the closings, we see the numbers. The stats are coming in. Although some of them are down, they're still occurring. So obviously some people can still buy. But if we use what I would call a long tail keyword and not leave it at nobody can buy a house, but expand to nobody can buy a house today the same way they bought a house 5 years ago. Greg then said, well, nobody can buy a house today for the same, because the home prices are, over the past 3 years have increased substantially in comparison to their income. So then I guess the caveat really being nobody can buy a house needs to be expanded upon. Homes cost way more today than people's income has increased. Like, by and large. There are some people out there who've made considerable amounts of money, more money now than they have before. And they are, they are who they are, and they buy what they buy. But for the most part, we have tons of neighborhoods and subdivisions, plenty of apartment complexes and multifamily. Percentage based, that's the huge chunk. Let's go 81-19. 81% is traditional median income, average, multifamily, and then the 19 is one-off, custom mansion, gated community. So the large percentage portion of the people are not the ones who are making considerably more money, considerably more money, exponentially more money. People who haven't increased their earnings beyond what real estate has jumped, and even at the time probably already had their hand in real estate, which that then lent them the opportunity to increase their net worth and their ability through this equity. So what do you think? What do you think about the fact that today, from the standpoint of nobody can buy a house, and on top of we are seeing an increase of listings and more inventory on the market. The inventory is sitting longer on the market, interest rates going up. What would be your long tail keyword behind nobody can buy a house?
I would say it would be more of nobody can buy a house maybe in the specific area they desire to be in, but if they looked left, right, forward, or backwards, they could probably get in somewhere.
That's a good one, because even here, we were just talking about something as simple as crossing the bridge into Niceville to say, or
ridiculously more affordable.
I don't know if it's saving.
Yeah, it's not the right way to phrase it, but different market, different prices. Yeah, different price point. From here to there, you could save $200,000 just by going across a bridge, but a lot of people don't want to do it because then you're not technically on the beach. You now have to drive into the beach. And the toll. The toll is a mental block for me. For a lot. Because it's like I know I have to pay. I know. $4 in, $4 out.
There's a cost per mile for every mile you drive in a vehicle. Yeah. I get it. But that one stings, it hits different.
Yeah, it does. So I think that's a problem for a lot of people, though, when they're saying, housing is unaffordable. Well, it might be unaffordable in the zip code you're looking in, but if you looked in a different zip code, you could find numerous ones that would be in your price range. But a lot of people want what they want and where they want it and aren't willing to make those compromises. So it's easier to say housing is unaffordable.
Nobody can buy a house today if they haven't changed jobs, if they haven't gotten better jobs. Or nobody can buy a house today if they are trying to do it on their own and they don't have additional co-buyers, co-signers, a spouse, a friend, roommates, multi-generational living. So
what's funny is that a lot of people, they're like, relationships are generally 80-20. You're not going to find somebody that's 100%. You're going to find 80% and you'll be okay without the 20%. Yet a lot of the same people won't look at houses the same way. They want that 100%. They want everything that they want or they're not going to do it. But if they looked at real estate the same way they looked at relationships, they'd probably be much happier and finding places they could easily live if they looked at it as an 80-20.
I mean, I think during the height of the frenzy, during the pandemic, people were less particular about what they were going to buy. And they got to the point where they were going to buy whatever they could get. And now...
Because they were going so fast, right?
And now, things have slowed down and they don't have that same mentality.
Well, I think
they don't have that same mentality.
I think it's because before they could get the things they wanted easier. So it was easier than it is now in the sense of there was more options to choose from. So they had a better chance of getting more of 90-10 or 95-5. You know what I mean? And now I feel like there's less of the options that most people want.
We started talking about interest rates and the fact that the Fed's not going to be lowering interest rates. And inflation continues to be a problem, but the problem isn't inflation. The problem is the ability. The ability for our society and economy to continuously thrive, employment levels to maintain, unemployment levels to be low, and our ability to continue to support inflation.
Well, also that, but then, when people say housing is unaffordable, it's also a lot of times people aren't willing to make changes to afford the housing. So you have to think about that like that. If you're taking 2 vacations a month, if you knocked it down to 1 vacation
Ain't nobody
taking
2 vacations a month.
I mean, there may be people out there. If you're eating 2 out of 3 meals out at restaurants, if you're going to Starbucks every single day, if you're doing all these things and you're saying housing is unaffordable, well, is it housing is unaffordable or your lifestyle is unaffordable? So I think that's another thing people have to look at as well. For a lot of people going, I can't afford a house. It's like, but you spend $15,000 a month on random stuff. If you didn't, you could afford a house.
Well, I think there is a large portion, a percentage of middle-class Americans who are saddled with debt that can't afford to buy a house or are unable to be approved based on their income and debt-to-income ratio and credit worthiness. What will consistently go out, buy, and spend. And I saw one the other day. I'll have to find it and pull it up. But it's like, they go out and spend unbelievable amounts of money on ridiculous things that just continue to push them. But it's like that movie, The Gambler. It's like the movie The Gambler, but they haven't quite reached the point yet where they're ready to get out.
Yeah.
And no longer be a gambler.
Yeah. Well, I think for a lot of people also, it's just easier to stay in the comfort of what is than to work hard for getting something bigger and better.
Well, you got to think. It's easier because that's what you're told. That's what you're taught. That's what you're fed. That's what you're shown. There's a confirmation bias there.
Think of people who are in their 30s still living at home as opposed to, putting the pressure on their parents and their whatever else in their house as opposed to getting their own place and things like that. Like, there's a lot of people, it's easier for them because they're not having to pay, so they can live this lifestyle they want and stuff like that.
More people probably watching this video have seen other videos that are telling them about a crash or collapse or a crisis or a failure or some imminent doom or a catastrophe or an emergency or something coming. More people have probably seen that than they have seen content associated with how to be successful, how to increase your earnings, how to improve your business, how to build wealth, how to get out of debt, how to live a much more enjoyable life, how to nurture relationships. Odds are they're not seeing those.
Well, unpopular opinion here, but it's easier for a lot of people to focus on the things that give them a way to blame other people for whatever's going on than it is to look at things and change them for better for themselves. I don't know if that makes sense.
I would say that it's easier for me to focus on something that's going to create a positive change, but then I realize that that's not necessarily true, because I also focus on the things that are harming people, preventing them from making that positive change. So there, in turn, I'm actually focusing on the negative.
True.
That is affecting people that I feel as though I need to try and help in some way, shape, or form.
But you're focusing on the negative in order to find the positive. A lot of people are focusing on the negative in order to wallow in the negative.
The negative to create more negative, to create repeat business and build subscribers and gain more views and make more money. The people who are doing this are literally telling everyone, the viewers that watch them, how bad things are and how much worse they're going to get, while they're making insane amounts of money hand over fist, but also not offering any form of possible solution or help to that problem. And it's purely a one-sided deal for their own sole gain and benefit, at the expense of those who watch and agree and absorb and live the life of, you're right, I'll never be able to buy a house. I'll never be able to make more money. I'll never be able to improve my situation. I'll never get this. I'll never do that. And that's pretty much it.
And that sucks. To want to be part of the never lifestyle.
I don't want to be a part of that lifestyle.
Same.
But I also want to be real and understand and explain some of these thought processes behind why nobody can buy a house. And there's more to it besides nobody can buy a house, because odds are you've probably seen someone move into a house recently. You've seen somebody sell their house recently. So obviously people are buying houses.
Yep. I've heard people say, well, I own my home. I couldn't go out and buy a house today. And I'm thinking, well, if you own your home and you sold it, you would have a ton of money to go out and buy a house today.
Depends on when they bought it.
In theory. But today's market is going to pay you more for your house than when you bought it, generally speaking.
It depends on when you bought it. It depends on whose advice you took.
Yeah.
If you listen to some of the doomsayers throughout the height of the greatest opportunity in modern history to make money in real estate, then you missed that opportunity.
Yeah, that
But
sucks.
if you did get in during that time, great. But if since that time you've extracted that equity and you've squandered it, well, now you're just as bad off as if you hadn't. Because, depending on when you bought, you could have seen a significant and tremendous increase in upside in equity. But if you took that equity and then you use it in some other way, well, now you're stuck. You're trapped. And your best bet is to break even, or a short sale, or a foreclosure.
Yeah.
Because I don't see... Well, time is on your side, because we're probably going to see another uptick in home values before we see a downward trend in interest rates.
I agree with that.
So time could be on your side if you can ride it out and see your property go up in value 25-30%. And then that would create some breathing room.
Yeah.
That would create some breathing room. But then the question is, what are you going to do with that when the time comes? When the time comes, you have to be in a position to be able to be approved for a refinance. You got to have the income. You got to have the credit. You got to have, all of that.
Lower debt.
So these are things I think should be more of a concern. Not so much nobody can buy a house, but all right, well, why don't we work towards making it so that you can?
I was about to say, instead of being that nobody can buy, how about we work towards being I'm one of the ones who can?
What would that include?
To me, being able to be one of the ones who can would be having lower debt, higher income. your debt to income ratio needs to have a larger gap as opposed to a smaller gap. And you need to have money in the bank, obviously, for down payment. You need to have something along those lines.
So there's 5 basic principles. You make more money. You spend less than you make. You budget. You knock out debt, and you save and invest. That's basically how it works.
Yeah.
Okay. How do you make more money? Well, I can tell you right now, you're not going to make more money by consuming content and engaging in discussions and conversations and wrapping your mind around mindless garbage on TikTok or something like that, but also by continuously having conversations with people telling you that they're broke and they don't have money and they'll never be able to buy a house, because that's not going to produce the change. That's not going to push you down the path of reasonable success to introduce the ability to execute on any of those 5 principles.
Yeah.
It's just not going to happen.
Well, you know, when you're younger and you're
look at your YouTube watch history. Just for fun, look at your YouTube watch history and tell me the last video, when you watched it and what it was titled in regard to improving your life, improving your financial situation, improving anything. Let me know what that was.
I was just thinking, when you're younger, even now, I mean, throughout your entire life, you pick your friends based on how they make you feel. And how many people go out and pick their friends based on how negative they are and how much they bring you down and how much they tell you you can't do something and things like that. So why would you want to surround yourself with content that does the exact same thing?
I don't think you want to.
Most people don't. I mean,
don't think
if the content that you're consuming is putting you in that mind frame, you got to think to yourself, would you be friends with that same group?
Well, the funny thing is I don't think you want to. And it's a little test that we run from time to time. And anyone starting a YouTube channel, they're told to do this. Log into YouTube, with no user data. And the reason you do this is to then begin consuming the content similar to that of what you're going to make, so you can get an idea of the avatar of the audience. But what you can't help but do is land on YouTube's homepage to start.
True.
And if you go to YouTube's homepage with no user data, what does YouTube show you? Well, what does YouTube show you? I don't think you want to consume this content, but YouTube is making it so that you do.
That makes sense.
TikTok is making it so that you do. Social media, mainstream media, news, everywhere, the radio is making it so you do.
Well, I mean, it is easier, and this is, that negative mind frame, but it is easier to control outcomes and control things if you can keep people in a negative mind space and keep people down.
There's a tremendous amount of control there, and also then creating demand for people to return and come back to be further to be satisfied with another hit. And the hit isn't necessarily against you. The hit is to remind you that everyone else is just as bad off as you are, if not worse, and it's not your fault. There's nothing you've done wrong. There are countless outside influences that have produced this terrible position that we are in, and come back tomorrow and we'll remind you of that yet again. In your city, in your state, in your country, doesn't matter. But there is another world out there that does exist, that is not so much focused on that and focused on so much more, that does allow for people to grow and improve to the point where they can buy anything they want. I was actually really surprised that Myron Golden said he doesn't care about price. He says, I buy whatever I want, whenever I want it, and I don't care how much it costs. He goes, if I worry about price shopping, I end up buying something that I don't want and I'm not satisfied with. And there's a lot to be said about that. He doesn't go into great detail, but I can tell you right now, Any of my truck guys out there, if you want a Super Duty, you want a Super Duty, okay? Silverado might be cheaper, but you want a Super Duty.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
If you really, there's, save you some money, price shop, cheaper, this, that, doesn't matter. You're not going to be happy. You're not going to be satisfied. You want a Super Duty. So.
You're talking trucks, and my brain's like, if you want a SS1LE, then.
So you need to buy that Super Duty. You don't need to try and price shop and price match and then get something cheaper, because you're not going to be happy with it. And you know, there's the old saying phrase, you buy right or you buy twice. And there's somebody who actually did that. That was simple living, outdoor living with the Morgans. I don't remember exactly what the name of the channel is, but he wanted a Super Duty, and he ended up getting something else. I think he got a GMC AT4, I think. And then shortly thereafter, he had a Super Duty.
Yep.
Now, granted, there was a mix-up with Ford producing his Super Duty, and then he ended up going and getting something different because he was whatever. But at the end of the day, he still ended up getting that Super Duty because that's what he wanted. And the only way that you can pull that off is if you are in the state of mind of growth and increase and abundance and wealth, and you know, having the ability, and not in the state of mind of continuously being swallowed up and consumed by all the negatives of the world that prevent you from any sort of success.
I agree.
But he never smiles in any of his thumbnails, so I don't know how happy he is. But he's definitely making a killing on YouTube. And a lot of folks are making a killing on YouTube. YouTube's a very profitable venture in more ways than one. I got links in the description if anybody wants to know more, get started. Feel free, reach out. See you guys on the next one.